So in a previous lesson, we prepared our starting point and we now have this in place. This is our chosen template, some sample content, and we're ready to start customizing. So what I'd suggest, and again, this course, it's not to show you what every single menu and button and option does. It's to walk you through a streamlined process to just get creating and to learn the essentials to creating something that looks professional as quickly as possible. So I recommend starting from the home page. Now, if you want to check what page you're currently viewing, in the Squarespace sidebar, if you click Pages, you'll see grayed out in capitals next to each of our sections, it has the word demo. So that's to let you know this is just demo content that you're using. We're currently looking at the home page, which is highlighted. And when it comes to doing styling, I think this can be quite a good page to look at because it's got a mixture of content. So all of this is going to make a little more sense as we dive in. Personally, I start with the header. So you enter edit mode, first of all, and you've got a little button in the top left that takes you into edit mode, or you can double click anywhere on the page. So I'm going to click the button to enter edit mode. And you'll see this now loads up the page minus our Squarespace sidebar. And as you hover over different elements, you can see the blocks that make up these elements on Squarespace. They're also divided into sections, and you have a little bit of control over settings for each section, for each block, and for each entire page. So we'll go in a little more detail into that once we start customizing the content. But let's start by just looking at the style and keep this demo content in place for now. So the header, if I hover up towards the site header, and as long as I'm in edit mode, you'll see this edit site header option appears. So I'm going to click that. And as I said, the template you choose, it doesn't lock options. It just gives you certain settings to start with and certain demo content. So I could achieve any type of header I like just by altering the settings that we have here. So under site title and logo, we've got the choice to add our own custom logo, which I'll definitely be doing. But first, I'm just going to go back and I'm going to look using this tab here at the desktop view. And I want to select a layout that I'm happy with for the header. So I'm going to click header layout. And I'd quite like to see how things look. I think with our logo in the center, that little box represents your social links, and then the navigation would be on the left. I might change that. It's quite easy to change that, revert it in future. But I'm going to click that for now and head back. Something else I'd like to do, I don't want this to be transparent. I'd quite like to be able to see a solid color behind the header. So for that, I'm going to go back to these globally applied settings, which is this little globe tab at the top here. And if I click style, you can see at the moment it's set to dynamic. I would like to select theme as the style, and that will let me choose one of the colors that's present in my theme. The other option, solid, well, that lets you choose any color you like from right here. But I'd quite like to tie that to my theme colors. So I'm going to select the dark option. That's actually quite close to what I'm looking for my brand. But I'll run through customizing these colors with you next. If I go back into site title and logo now, I'm ready to swap my logo in. So I'll navigate to that, or you can simply drag and drop. And I have a file prepared that's just right, so you won't want any negative space around the logo. You'll want it cropped nice and tightly. And for my purposes, I need a light version of my logo. I'm not going to use the full logo, which I can show you if I pop it up just here. This would be my full logo. I'm instead going to use this, which is just for logo type. So I'll drag that on. to that logo section, and that's it. It's put it in place. So that's a little smaller than I'd like it. And you can see you've got some options here to adjust the size. It only gives you the option to adjust for height, but the width will then follow accordingly. So let's increase the height. 80 pixels, that's looking good. And then on mobile height, I'll move the slider so it's kind of matching. You can toggle, by the way, between the desktop and mobile view using the two buttons at the top here, which is quite helpful. So if I do that, that's how it's looking on the mobile view. So I'm quite happy with those settings. It's worth mentioning any changes you make to the content, even the style, you need to save them. They won't automatically go live. So in the top left, over where it says done, if you hover over that, you've got two options to either save or discard your changes. So I'm going to click save. And that's now saved the style for this new header that I've set up. Now, all of the other style changes are actually made not live on the page, but in a special section. So if we navigate back to the home part of our Squarespace sidebar, you'll see there's a design heading. And this is where the rest of our style changes will take place. If you click the first option, Site Styles, you can see you've got a number of categories here: fonts, colors, animations. That's a new feature which I'm really pleased with that Squarespace have added, and spacing, global spacing. You can also customize buttons and image blocks. So I would recommend running through these headings. It's quite intuitive, quite self-explanatory, but just customizing and changing this to suit your needs, to suit your brand. So I'm going to begin with fonts. And at the moment, the font doesn't quite reflect what I had in mind for the brewery. This is quite a generic, bold font. It's legible, it's easy to read, but I want to use something that's maybe a little lighter, a little sleeker. And for my main headings, I might try to choose something a little closer to the wording for Evoke, a serif typeface. So Squarespace gives you some starting points. It always tries to almost give you an easier option, and then you can dive in deeper if you'd like to. So if you liked the fonts that have already been suggested by the template, you could keep those in place. You've got a few options like adjusting the base size, which you can see in real time. It shows you a preview globally, but again, until you go to save in the top left, nothing is set in stone. So you could click through these headings, paragraphs, and you can choose from a range of options here if you wanted to keep the same font. Or if you click on font family, you could swap a different font in. If I click on back, before you come to that, if you wanted to change the fonts, if you click on this section here, where at the moment it says Acumen Pro, you'll see it says font pack, and it's got the option to switch. So if we click to switch the font pack, it actually gives you a combination, a pairing of pre-configured fonts. So I'd recommend having a go with a few of these. You're not saving anything, so it's quite easy to just click them and have a look and try to get something that's in a general direction you're looking for before you then fine-tune and you go through and you make the more minute changes. So this is quite a useful feature to use. Acumen Pro, I think that's the font pack that came preloaded with this template. Futura, that's one I often use, and so on. There's lots of options there. It also divides them into sans serif, serif, and mixed. So sans serif, it's without the little serifs at the edges of the characters. And serif includes those edges, so it has a more traditional, a more classic look. And if I click some of these options, you'll see it makes quite a big difference to the overall style. Now, for screen reading, Sans serif is definitely better for your smaller text, your body text. It's less likely to break up if someone doesn't have the latest Retina screen. So that's where this mixed option is quite good. And not always, but generally, these mixed options, they combine a serif font for your headings, for the larger text, with sans serif for the smaller text. It's done it in the preview, hasn't actually done it to this piece of text here. So I wonder if maybe, okay, so it's classing this as body text, but this, I suppose, is still a small heading. So again, you can sort of come out of the font pack options, but again, you could click through and have a look at some of the options here. Select something that you think works for your brand. Now, for this brand, I know what I'm looking for, so I'm going to go through and pick something more specific. So for my paragraphs, definitely don't want to use Arial. If you go to Browse All Fonts, you'll see there's a wide library, and I believe at the moment this is pulling fonts from Google Fonts, from Adobe Typekit, and from a few other foundries as well. So there's a huge selection. It would take you quite a long time to scroll through all of the options. So there's this handy search function. If you're working on a brand where you've already picked out fonts and colors, well, you could just type the name of a font you're looking for straight in there. So I'm going to use Lato, which is my preferred font for body text. And with that locked in as the option, I could then choose to customize the weight, which I will do. I'm going to make that just a touch lighter. The letter spacing I'm happy with. You can see these are quite self-explanatory options for fine tuning. Squarespace manages fonts by giving them one of a few different style types. So there are several different types of heading, and there are 3 different types of paragraph. So if I save my changes for now, and the speed is pretty good on this, but sometimes you'll select a function. It takes just a few seconds to load and refresh. If I double click to go into edit mode, and we'll focus just on this portion of text here, you can see as I highlight that text, at the moment it's assigned heading 4. There's also heading 3, 2, and 1. 1 being the largest, 4 being the smallest, and then you have your paragraphs. 1 again being the largest, and 3 being the smallest. So now we know what it is that's affecting. It's going to be these portions of text that you can give one of these presets. If we go back, going to save, we won't have that text that small, but just as a demonstration, we'll go back into style, into fonts, into paragraphs. Now, if you look at the bottom where we've got this slider to choose the size for each of these paragraph types, because I've assigned paragraph 3 to this portion of text, as I move the slider, you can see that's what it's affecting. So it's quite nice to stack those so that you've got some options when it comes to design some larger paragraphs, but then perhaps some smaller text as well. Now for my heading text, and bear in mind, while I'm taking you through my example, please work through this yourself. You won't have to use each of the options I'm selecting. This is just what I feel will be best for the brand that I'm working with. So in my case, for my headings, I don't think I'll be able to find a font that matches this custom font for Evoke closely enough. So if I can't match it exactly, I'd rather use something that complements it. So the font I've used here for Brewery, the tagline, is Futura. So I'm going to click into headings, select family, browse all, search for Futura PT. That's perfect. And that will now swap that in as a heading font. Now that's quite a far cry from what I'm hoping to achieve for the headings. For one thing, I want that to be a much lighter font weight. So I'm going to change the weight. We'll go all the way down to 300. Now that looks nice and light and elegant. I also want it to only appear as uppercase. And that's a little tip that sometimes works quite nicely. Uppercase only headings. So we do that under this section here, text transform, uppercase. And now that's only going to display in uppercase like that. And then while I'm not going to space it quite as dramatically as I have in the logo for brewery, I'm definitely going to increase the letter spacing. So let's try, that's maybe a little too much. Let's try 0.15 EM. That looks pretty good, but I can see I'm going to run into a few problems if I have it that spaced out. We can see this little bit of text, it's taking up 3 lines. I think that's at the largest heading size. So I'm going to scale these back a little. So I'll use 3 as the largest size and scale this back a little bit. And if I wanted to find examples of text with those particular sizes, you can look through, but generally the templates on the home page, you should be able to find one example of everything. So there's my heading 2. Not sure if I'll have a heading 3, but we might. Yeah, there's some text moving there. So our heading 3 will go a little smaller again. Heading 3 really I would use for a sizable amount of text, maybe a paragraph, but something I kind of want to call out to highlight. I think that looks quite nice there. And then heading 4, personally I'll use that for text that's maybe just going to introduce a paragraph. So I'd have that 1 being the same size as paragraph text. I would put that just at 1.1. So it's almost the same size, it just has a different style. So that's it. Once I click back and then click save, that's massively transformed the look and feel of the template already, making those font changes. And that's it. We can fine tune as you go through designing, but as a starting point, that's it. My fonts are in place. Now you can also customize the fonts for your buttons, which I haven't done yet. I might not take you through each of those settings step by step because it's repeating the same process. You choose your font and then you just go and you're tweaking each of these sliders to customize it. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I won't take you through each of those, but I'm going to run through off camera and just adjust the style for the buttons. And there we are. So if you're interested, these are the settings I arrived at. Again, I quite like uppercase for the buttons, some nice generous spacing. So to me, that's looking really good. Quite a nice feature I will mention. As I clicked on the secondary button tab, they actually have a little warning now to tell you this page doesn't have a, and whatever the element is. So that's quite useful as you're styling. If you come to an element that's not present on the page, that's quite a nice touch. There's a little warning for you there. So again, you've got 3 different types of buttons. You configure the preset and then you're ready to use that across the template. So the next big customization is color. I'm not going to be changing the color that much because in my brand, we're actually using grayscale colors, which are very close to what we have in the template, but I'll walk you through the process anyway. So again, we're under styles, and this time instead of fonts, we want to click colors. And you can see this is the current color palette. So you have a few options. I'll explain how these are applied first. So each of the colors in the palette, in your theme, it will apply it to a preset. And it starts by giving you light presets, bright presets, dark presets, and then darkest. And that's using a cocktail of the colors that you've given it. Now that gets you to a really fast starting point. But again, if you need to customize and fine tune, There's a lot of customization you can do. If you were to click the little edit icon for any one of these preset options, you'll see that it takes you to each and every element of your website, and you can completely customize the color that's used. So if I clicked, for example, this one here for small paragraphs, if I wanted them to have a different color, I could pick any color I like, or if I click the palette tab, I could click one of the colors that I've programmed into the color palette. So lots of customization, but you don't have to go through every option. You only use this to fine tune and tweak, which I love. And you can actually see at the top right of each page section which color combination has been applied from your palette. So you can see this section, it has dark 1 applied to it, which matches up with this one here. And this section has bright 2, which matches up here. So before we actually tweak the colors, that should give you some idea of how Squarespace is using and applying them and the kind of level of control that you have. So I won't save my changes, but I'll make some fairly dramatic tweaks here just so you can see this being used. So they have presets that you can select from. I'm using one of the presets at the moment. If I choose a preset like that, by just clicking this one button, every color throughout your entire website will change just like that. So it's quite a powerful way of previewing different color combinations without making any destructive changes. Now, if you're like me, particularly if you're working for a brand, if you've come to this stage, you've already created a logo, you've likely established a color palette. If not in its entirety, likely at least got the core colors that you'll be planning to use. So one option, and I don't use this because I'm not sure it's 100% accurate, is you have a From Image tab, and you could actually drag an image in and Squarespace will identify the colors that appear in that image. So that could be useful if you're looking for ideas, or if you look along the top, you can ignore the presets and you can actually select each of these colors yourself. Squarespace implements this going from lightest to darkest, and I guess you have your saturated colors seem to work best if you place them in the middle of a palette. So when we go to edit palette, if you try to give it at least one light and dark color and the 3 in the center, you're kind of a little more free to tweak and play with. That tends to ensure that when these colors are thrown into the template, it works as intended. So for example, I could pick a kind of dusty version of a turquoise. I could then pick a strong version of a turquoise. I could pick something like that for this 4th option here. So it's heading towards a really dark color, but there's still the potential for it to have some saturation to it. That still works well. And then for your dark color, you really either want that to be black or maybe an off black gray. Now, if I scroll through, you can see that combination, as it's thrown into the template, it works as intended. There's good contrast and we're getting the kind of results we'd expect. So I'm actually going to discard this because I was happy with the palette I've been given to begin with. I even quite like this sort of dusty brown shade that we have here. So I'm very happy to just begin using this color palette. And that happens sometimes in Squarespace. It's one of the advantages. Sometimes you are pleasantly surprised and a template gets you close enough to what you're looking for that you don't have to scroll through pages of options and you don't need to fine tune if you're happy with what it's presented you to begin with. So we've now input some of the core facets of a brand's look and feel, the fonts, the colors, and we can see those are coming through into our demo content, but I'm sure you're quite keen to start putting your own content in place. But there's one more step we'll take before we begin swapping content in, which is to just look at our pages and navigation. And now that we've got a good idea of a look and feel we're getting from our theme and our style, we'll start deciding which pages we're keeping, and we'll spend a little time explaining the navigation. So we'll do that together in the next lesson.